First of all, I think your analysis was very straight line. History doesn't run in a straight line.
Kid, you cannot tell your neighbor he is stealing ducks when you are stealing funds.
As High Commissioner, I was wrong. As Charandas Prasad, I reacted naturally how any person would have.
I did not come here for that kind of abuse. I did not come here for that kind of abuse. If you're going to go down that road, I'll walk off.
But it's all okay once they're talking. If they were talking, I could not have been here today.
You got ADHD
I
or
got
something
that
like that. No, calm down.
I think I've done enough in terms of taking our team out of trouble from losing.
Come on, Lou Taylor. That's good. I'm reading the script now, and the first person that comes to my mind to play a detective,
Yes,
but
the
an
kind of
erratic
Mikhail
detective,
Rodriguez.
is Mikhail Rodriguez.
Why an African slap an Indian? Why a man and slap a woman? No, Gildarie, you deal with that. You deal with that.
We must encourage platforms like this because it brings together different people and allows for discussions to take place in our country on a multiplicity of fundamental issues.
Gildarie, you apologizing for something you think I did is wrong. I don't want you to do that, and you should not have done that. Hello there, hi there. Welcome to the Gildarie Freddie Kissoon show. This is our 24th month, and thank you for being with us. Leonard Gildarie is going back to the US for further medical tests, but we have an equally competent co-host in the former marketing manager for the Chronicle, Akash Prasad. As you would know, he appeared on this program a couple of times as the co-host, and he certainly will be in the future. Our guest this evening will, for the next hour, add to the historiography of Guyana. When you have such people as your guests and the positions they held in the past, then history is recorded. Our guest this evening is one of the founding members of the Alliance for Change, the first General Secretary of the Alliance for Change, and currently the General Secretary of the Alliance for Change. And when the Alliance for Change got into power in 2015, he became the Minister of Public Infrastructure, which is now known as the Ministry of Public Works. Let me say this, if you've been watching this program with me, when we have our guests that I have known over a long set of years, irrespective of politics, I have spoken about my relationship with them and how they related to me and how I related to them. I have always said that on the program when they were guests that I have known, what we in Guyana say in common parlance, donkey years. David Patterson is someone that I've never said this before on this program, or never written it before. When Mr. Patterson was a minister for 5 years, I was writing a daily column, and I've never said it in any one of those columns, and I've never said it before, and I'm saying it now. David Patterson and I became very close friends, and he's someone that I found to be the most open-minded person in the leadership of the Alliance for Change, and we became very close friends. I didn't have much, I don't want to use the word respect, but I really didn't care much for many of the leaders in the Alliance for Change, except I've been a long-standing friend of Kemraj Ramjatan. But the person that I got close to because of his personality, political character, was David Patterson. And at the time before 2015, I found David Patterson to be the most likable person for me in the Alliance for Change. Of course, as you would know, the Alliance for Change got into power in 2015, and he became the Minister of Public Infrastructure. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce and thank him very much for being here, and I hope historical notes will become part of Guyana's historiography in the next hour. David, thanks for being here. Despite we gone our separate ways, I do have an immense appreciation for you.
Thank you very much, Freddie.
Thank you for being here.
Yes. Good night to your viewers. I feel with that introduction as you sort of, you mean fattening the calf for the slaughter, but never mind, you know what I mean?
No, I want you to feel comfortable.
Oh,
but on the other hand, I have to go down a path that would add to Guyana's historiography. And let me go down that path now.
Before you go there, Freddie, just let me, for the records, because I know all the time, I wasn't the first General Secretary.
Okay.
I was probably the third, I think. Yeah, you know what I mean? We had 2007, so I was the third or the fourth. And the current General Secretary, as you know, I went, Sher Duncan.
Oh, you're not the current General Secretary?
Not the current General Secretary. I mean, I would have contested the only leadership position to our last conference. Was won by fairly and squarely, democratically by Comrade Ramchatan. So, I mean, and one of the things I believe in is we are long in the tooth, as you would say. You know, I mean, it's not really age, it's time you spent on the pitch. So I've been on the pitch, the General Secretary pitch, for quite some time. So I said, oh, it's time to allow the younger fast bowlers to take their turn. So Sherrod is up there now.
But you're in the executive.
I'm in national executive,
okay.
As always.
Let's go down the path of recording history. David, I think outside of the United Force in 1964, the most successful third party in Caribbean history has been the Alliance for Change. I don't know if I could say the most successful, because the United Force was very popular. But I will put it in context. Whereas the United Force was ethnically based and class based, it was the party of the mercantile class, the commercial class, predominantly Muslim and mulatto people. And I think the Guyanese population saw it as a party for that. The Alliance for Change was far more entrenched in the national psyche of the nation with multiracial support. In that sense and in that context, I would say it was the most successful third party in the Caribbean. I was in a vehicle with Comrade Ramchatan, and he was speaking to a Caribbean guest, a Caribbean visitor who was in the car, and he said to him, this party has been the most successful third party in the Caribbean. But all of the independent analysts, David, I haven't seen anyone that does political analysis, that studies Guyana history, its sociology. I haven't seen anyone that haven't concluded that sadly the Alliance for Change lost its way in politics when it got into government. We have had a number of people with access to the power base of the AFC. I can call them, and they were all on this program. Ginger Besessel, Aldwin Rutherford, Michael Carrington, Leonard Craig. All four of them agree that the AFC lost its way in power. Dominic Gaskin takes that position, but he has a dimension to his analysis that is different from the four I called. He said, looking back, yes, these were his words. We sacrifice our core values to keep the coalition alive, and that is where we went wrong. But no one bullied us when we were in power. Do you agree that the Alliance for Change lost its way when it got into power?
All right, thanks, Freddie. First one, I share Dominic's view I mean, obviously, there were certain issues which were very, very, very dear to us, and there were certain issues which we, after being very reluctant to go into a coalition, that we wanted to achieve, and number one was constitutional reform. You know how, based on our constitution, basically being a third party, that our constitution prohibits post-election coalition. Because if there was post-election coalition, I don't think there would have been a coalition. That goes for saying United's force was very, very fortunate, and they did well, that they were able to have post-election coalitions. And so that's one of our core values. But to say anyone bullied us, I mean, I think that at the end of the day, we absorbed a set of responsibilities, maybe unwisely so, but we felt that since we were the persons that sort of reintroduced coalition politics into the country, we had an obligation to do our best to see if it can work. And that, if you say, and if you equate that to sacrificing your core value, then you're right. But from our view is that we said, listen to me, we have to do the best. We have to show the best, because obviously until you have constitutional reform and you have post-elections coalitions, we have to, because of course we always felt that coalition politics in some form or fashion would be the way forward. So I mean, if you say for that dream of having a coalitive electorate, if you want to peg it as losing core values, that's one definition. Our view was that we have to do our best. So I mean, the discussion you were having here about core values and about coalition and those things like that, I'm sure Dominique would have said it. We had it almost weekly at our meetings, weekly, saying that there are things that we wanted to do differently. However, at the end of the day, the question came: do you want to bring the government down? How will generations consider you the persons, we the persons that introduced the Cummins-Berger Accord and those things like that? We made several demands. So while one said persons may classes lose your identity, we tried our best, gave our best to try and keep coalition politics alive. And in that way, of course, we would have suffered a backlash. But that's the honest assessment of what happened.
Akash?
First of all, Mr. Patterson, let me say it's a pleasure to be sitting here with you, to be sitting amongst two distinguished gentlemen. It really is an honor. And Freddie, Mr. Kissoon, I've always seen him as someone who's been mentoring me. And while the conversation this evening will go in directions that I think Mr. Kissoon is much more adept in dealing with, there are a few things that I would like to ask also.
No problem.
When the coalition was formed, and of course you mentioned the Cummins-Berger Accord, there was this 40-60 split. Then there was another accord that was formed later down, which saw the AFC not getting as much as it did before. There is coming another election in 2025, of course. And you talk about coalition politics. If the AFC is to go back into coalition politics, what strength do you think you're taking forward to the next election? Or if you're going to go independently, then what strength are you taking forward because you had that 40-60, do you think that the AFC still has the strength to demand 40-60?
First and foremost, just for the record, at our last national conference, I think it was in June 2022, the AFC took a decision that they're no longer in the Commonsburg clause. It has a sunset clause of 36 months, and we've invoked the clause so the 1st of January 2023, and that's the current position of the party. So discussing what percentage we get and those things like that is definitely not something the party has geared towards. And let me say this, the percentages that you call and you give 40 and then of course 30 was never ever based on from the AFC's position, never ever based on the electoral strength or the perceived electoral strength, because I would never be so arrogant as to think that at any one stage I thought that the AFC commanded 40% of the electorate. However, what we command, and I do think that is still possible, we commanded the 1% or whatever percent it needs to carry to 50.1, whatever it is. I do think that's still possible. You can put a name, you can put a number on it and so forth. I mean, it could even be 0.001, but as long as any party to become elected again has to get past the 50%, and that is the basis on which we had the negotiations with our colleagues. You got to get to 50.1%. How do you see you getting there? And there's long discussions and those things like that. So do you think you can get there without us? After long reflection, they say you would contribute. So they said, what are you willing to give to this party to get even the 0.1, even if and I know a lot of people say, oh, how many votes you brought? Even if we only contributed the 0.1 of the 50. That was enough to get you into government. And what are you willing to? These are what we would like for our 0.1.
So that was the power card that you held. The power card that you held in your hand.
Yes.
Well, and I must let you know that the questions I will ask you this evening are questions that lingers in the minds and in the soul of the country as to where the AFC was and where it is now and where it is heading. Yeah, Mr. Kissoon.
Yeah, David. It is a journey in fascination when you speak to any of the top leaders of the AFC, and many of them were here. The apex would be people like you and Dominique Gaskin. I go back to my first question. So much was on the shoulders of the AFC. This party in 2000 formed just months before the 2006 elections, and it won handsomely. Then in 2011, what was going through the mind of, I know you, and in those years before 2015, I could not see you, and I'm speaking frankly now, I could not have seen you just being a normal voice in the government and things just drifted. But things drifted. Dominique Gaskin said there were things that happened in the government that hurt the AFC. He cited the absence of the marijuana bill. Day 1, day 2, day 3, month 1, month 2, year 1. Didn't occur to you that, listen, the AFC is losing its way?
Well, I mean, once again, you're trying to put words into it, saying the AFC is losing its way. Look, there were a couple of issues which, and obviously, what happens behind closed doors. let me start off by saying one of the biggest flaws that then government, and probably still now, is our PR ability to communicate our current positions to the people, and that has been a bane in our thing. There were a couple of issues that started off, I mean, and we grappled with very early how to fight them. And I start off with the parking meters, which was something that we, as you know, opposed. The Alliance for Change opposed. However, one of the unfortunate things is most of our leaders were in the cabinet. So therefore, obviously, there's collective responsibility. And so we empowered Sherrod, the late Lionel Jaikaran, and those persons, I mean, to be our voices as opposed to us as ministers. I mean, you can take it as much. One of and it started from there. How can should we, if we have an issue that we feel strongly about, do we bring down the government on this? Should we have brought down the government on the question of the parking meters, which we opposed, you know? And then, so we decided, and this is how we decided to do, but within our own ministries, within our sphere of influence, we shall do everything to oppose it. So we had Sherrod, who was the deputy mayor at the time, and then Lionel, who was the subsequent deputy mayor, publicly going on the strike, publicly when anyone asks us, what do you feel about the parking meters? We say Mr. Duncan and Mr. Jaikaran are our spokespersons. Internally, and this is how we envision that, because obviously you have to remember as well that we were all very new to governance and politics, in the sense of actually being in government. You have to remember that not one of the others, save except Moses Nagamutu, not one of us would have even stepped into a cabinet room until May of 2015. So we would, like, say for the parking meters, I can say now, I mean, it's a public, after all these years, you know, I looked in my ministry and said, how can I stall this? And I declared, if you could remember, if anybody could, I declared several roads, public roads, so that, and published it in the papers that the citizens can park on these roads because they're not under the purview of the city council. These are all facts. And then obviously that started to dissipate their influence. People started parking back on Water Street, not Main Street, Avenue Republic and those things like that. Because so while you may think, and while people may see that, we may think that we're not actually fighting against things that we don't. It's our approach in which we did it. It could have been more aggressive. We could have been more hands-on. I mean, maybe people were accustomed to us to be more aggressive to these issues, but literally on every matter that we held firm on. You know, I could remember the Joe Harmon and the president saying the meeting with the AFC was like meeting with the opposition. That's what we were so internally, when we meet with them, we were so strong on our positions and those things like that. But then it always came back, as Dominic says, always came back to the position, do you bring the government down on this? And we felt, and speaking to people, I mean, of course, hindsight is 2020, people said to us, and these were support said to us, that you had a government for 23 years. You all got to try and make it work. You can't just, I mean, it, and you can't just simply, because you don't like it, 23 years, say it out that you will bring the government down after 2 years of trying. So these are all these. So while you're saying you lose the identity, there are people including the business community and those things like that, saying, well, hold on a second, you know, I mean, we invested in you. We want you to, you have to try the best, because obviously we invested in the Alliance for Change component, because that's why we voted with the coalition. It's irresponsible for you to bring the government down on a matter matter at the parking meters. That's just an example, which we oppose.
Mr. Patterson, a few weeks ago, three gentlemen who you know very well was on this same platform, sitting at the same table, and they are Mr. Rajendra Bisesar, Michael Carrington, and Leonard Craig. And the topic of third party, force came up. And the general consensus, and not only between what was shared that night, but in the public domain, is that when the Alliance for Change did well as a third force, and in their quest for power, joined with APNU, went on to form a government, which was a coalition government, and but somehow lost its way with the people who backed them and put them up there. Do you believe, Mr. Patterson, that because of the general consensus that I mentioned and what people believe should not have happened, that third force politics has been killed somewhat because of that?
No, but let me start off that I think, you mean, there's a narrative going around, and I think it's spread by non-supportive persons, that the reason we went into the coalition was a quest for power. Let me debunk that immediately, and Freddie can bear me out here. We went from a position of never, right? Persons, and this is not good, persons that joined, that agreed to go into the coalition vehemently hated internal party or disliked both the PPP and the PNC. However, after the no confidence motion in 2014, which we signed and those things like that, after Donald Ramatar, the PPP prorogued the parliament and those things like that, we were dead set on going back to the elections, because we knew when you prorogation, we didn't realize there was a cooling off period, he said, but almost everybody said, we're going back. We were dead set on going back as it is and have another hung parliament. And the public, and Fred and my colleague here would know all the people here, the lay persons, looked at us and said to us, so what really are you doing? You're going back and you're going to put these people back again. They'll continue doing this because, of course, even with the hung parliament, there's some flagrant disregards of constitutional matters. I think the Ian Chang ruled on several of them in that period. And it started a crescendo in the sense that you had 23 years of the PPP. You have an opportunity to sit, and then the older folks, elder folks started saying, "You mean we're gonna die here?" And you have this opportunity to change it. We had one of the most, and I can tell you, I was the general secretary there. We had one of the most, troubling national executive conference, and that was held in December of 2014. And I know this for sure, myself and Comrade Ramchatan, because we had to make a decision if we would, and of course the party was equally divided, yay, nay, to consider joining into coalition. Myself and Comrade Ramchatan, he also says, went to bed. It was a Saturday. It was a St. Stanislaus College, December 2014. I think we went to bed about 3 o'clock in the morning, just going over the pros and cons, ringing everybody, saying that then Comrade had to make a decision. He's the leader. And then he made that decision. He made the announcement that we are not, we will consider it. But it was nothing to do with getting into power. It's to do with, listen to me, you had the PPP there, even, and the backdrop of it, and Freddie, you know this well, the backdrop of it, the Alliance for Change from 2011, we had a hung parliament. 2011 to 2015, we had some core issues we asked for. we said, the government, you have our support on any property, and we voted with the government several times. We voted against them several times as well. I don't know which number. We set out, here's what we want you to do. Establish a public procurement commission. If you can remember, we were like that, so therefore there's some oversight over things. They bluntly refused. I can remember meeting with Donald Ramatar and Anil Nandalal at Sleep-In, myself and Kemraj in the evening, saying this, and the APNU were pounding for local government elections. And we sat down there, and then of course the government wanted anti-money laundering legislation to pass, certain amendments. And we sat there in February of 2014, and I was there. I still have my notes. I said to them, this said to Donald Ramatar, the president at the time, Anil Nandalal, the Attorney General, give the Alliance for Change, establish a public procurement commission, which is a constitutional provision which came through the constitutional reform process in 2012 or 2010 or something like that. Never established before, which is supposed to have oversight over, well, the intentions of oversight over procurement, which we felt was a area of corruption and leakage. Give the Alliance for Change, establish the Public Procurement Commission, independent, impartial commission. In return, we will support the amendments that you are bringing on the anti-money laundering law, but which were unpopular at the time, and they wanted to do some things which fortunately never happened. And then, so that was our position, meaning you, the government, Donald Ramatar, you go and speak to the APNU on local government elections. Donald Ramatar and Anil Nandalal said, and I'm interesting, that the Public Procurement Commission is unconstitutional, that there should be nobody can have oversight over cabinet. Have my notes, was there. So we said, well, what do we do? I mean, because of the private sector at the time, who were quite close to a certain sector, they were clamoring to get the anti-money laundering because we were on the verge of being blacklisted. We were grey listed and those things like that. So we were under tremendous pressure. So when the no confidence came up and those things like that, the same persons that were there saying, so why are you even considering going back as you are, the most basic of requirements that you ask, a constitution, the Public Procurement Commission, they refused to establish. You know what I mean? Doing the same thing and expecting a different result is a definition of madness, and that is exactly what happened.
But the latter part of my question that I ask is that, do you think though that third force hopefuls still has an opportunity? Why?
Of course, because I do think that persons are fed up with the status quo. When you give people either only two choices, right? Between the devil and the deep blue sea. Mm-hmm. Either they stay away or they support. So I do think that the third force, unfortunately, as I studied initially, how our constitution is stated, right? That you can have the same situation that you had in 2011 to 2015 as a hung parliament, which is a good thing. However, that doesn't stop anything. It doesn't stop the government from doing whichever government is not particularly right. There's still no accountabilities. During 2011 and 2015, Donald Ramatar, as the president of Guyana, refused to send about 8 different bills. The Parliament of Guyana. So people have to understand the backdrop. The Parliament of Guyana voted assent to this bill, so forth. He refused to assent to the bill. So therefore, obviously, you couldn't even get bills passed that the parliament majority, the people, the representative majority of the people of Guyana voted for. You kind of forget these issues. So that was the backdrop of the Alliance for Change decision in 2014, the end of December 2014. You know what I mean? And Freddie, you can remember it was a really testing and horrible time. I mean, because I was one of the naysayers, and I was one of the no, we shouldn't be in this. But then obviously, I mean, then you have responsibilities, right? I was one of them saying, you know, I mean, no, that we know we know our opponents, we know what they, we know our colleagues over there. But then the party voted at a national in December, I think December 14th, if I can remember, 2014. I was the general secretary. I have responsibilities. They set out here, these are the parameters, David, general secretary. You were the person tasked in the party to go. So whatever reservations I had, threw them aside and did what the party instructed.
But Dominique Gaskin has a different position to the one that is emanating here from you. And I will ask you to go back and look at his. He was saying that the reason why, no, he didn't say the reason why. He was saying, look, if the AFC take these position of morality, position of accountability to the people who voted for them, and leave, you would still have had an APNU government, because those seats for the AFC would have been replaced, would have been replaced by APNU people. So the AFC would have been gone, but you would have had an APNU AFC majority, because the AFC could not have pulled out of the government and the government fall. Because of the nature of the law, you would have still had a majority APNU AFC majority. Do you agree with that?
In theory, that's highly theoretical, right? In theory.
So you're saying the government would not have fallen?
No. So in theory, one of the things that was negotiated in the first Commons Board was an independent representative of the list. And we insisted on that to ensure that the representative of the list could not simply, because obviously all you need to remove a member of parliament is the representative list to say that this list has no confidence in Freddie Kissoon or David Patterson or Dominique Gaskin. And it doesn't even have to go to a vote, just as a letter. So that's one of the safeguards we ensured that was in Commonsburg Accord 2015 to 2020. In theory, you could have resigned from Parliament and resigned from giving up your portfolio of in government and still remain as a backbencher. As even a separate thing. But in practice...
But there would have been a government.
There would have been a government, right? Obviously, but in practice, that wouldn't work. It's best you go back, you broke the government up, because obviously for a bill to pass, it would have been a stagnated government. For a bill to pass, for anything to pass, it just would, I mean, these are things we discussed. So it's a really good theory, and a nice hindsight option which persons could bring up thing, but it really and truly wouldn't work. You have, because we would be forced, or we would be in the position of supporting bills which you had no input in. You'll be in a position of having budgets or having things which you had little input in. So you would be voting it down, so the parliament would have come to a standstill, would be ineffective, and probably would not be good for a country again at the stage we were, when the parliament just comes and grinds to a halt because of nuances like that.
David, I think any dispassionate sociologist, political theorist who respect their profession would admit that there was a magical sweep of the AFC. They were catapulted by by the emotions of people who were saying, this is a third party. Let's give them the wedge to drive between the two, and you were driven as a wedge between the two. But surely, leaving aside not wanting to bring down the coalition, someone like you, that I know, and some of these things when it happened, I thought about people like imagine you. Now, if you cannot find the money to subsidize the sugar industry, and there was a whole set of statistics and theory out there that Guyana cannot sell sugar on the market. You're selling for below cost of production. Now, if you're taking the position that we've got to downsize the industry, surely when you did that, there had to be a moral fallback that you can't put 7,000 people out a job like that. There had to be a blueprint to take care of these people, but they weren't. They even had to go to court to get their severance pay. I am asking you, how could you have sat down there and not say, look, no, man, but let's give the people the land.
Freddie, that is that's why we come on these things, because you are throwing out a really broad statement. They had to go to court. It was not it was the whales. The workers and please, let us be very clear with what we're saying here. When the whales, which is the first sugar estate that was closed down, the Minister of Agriculture, and I think the Minister of Labor, said that, listen to me, if you offer them alternative employment, I may stumble on the legal terms, but generally what my understanding was, if you offer them alternative employment within a certain distance from where they previously work, they are not considered severed. And that was done. The workers did not want, because they were being transported from Wales to Iflot. And according to the labor, and I'm no lawyer, so therefore obviously I taken this as face value. That was a 40-mile radius, and you can research it. The workers took that to court and won, and the court said that whatever theory they have here they should be paid their severance. So when you make a broad statement like that, it gives the perception that it was all the workers and those things like that. And secondly, and you are right, and you are so right. You are so right, and this is where I don't know, and you know this as well, because I think everybody in Alliance for Change knows this. We put up several proposals, Alliance for Change, myself included, right? Because we were under the position, not the right sizing of sugar, because of the cost and those things like that, we all agreed that it was unsustainable. But we said, listen to me, there are alternatives. I was just looking last week, and I sent it to Minister Trotman, for Minister Trotman. We said, of course, here's what we're going to do. In the public, we're going to build the first shore base in Berbice before the sugar estates. That is the public document. We went to Louisiana. We signed the MOU with this company, one of the biggest companies at the Port of Louisiana, the state of Louisiana. We're going to build the right there. So therefore, obviously, because of we said I was close to there. What followed? We went to cabinet. What followed was a series of legal injunctions against us. We announced it, they set up before the sugar thing. Still have the cabinet papers, still have the MOU, still have the commitment from the company name slips me. They were going to invest $500 million, even before Gisby, before even this year. So, and we said, fair enough, here we go. We went to Berbice. And we said we're going to do it, Crab Island, go. Announcing it, I laugh now because obviously this is how the politics in Ghana. Several persons who are now in the government file legal claims, legal sent in lawyers' letters and those things like that, you know what I mean, against us, saying that they own, there's no record, they own Crab Island. It's a sort of frivolous legal thing. And that, in fighting that, time overcame us, right? The question of, and I was always very, very supportive of giving the cane work, the retrenched workers land and those things like that. The question was how you do it, and that was the Ministry of Education, Agriculture, and then there was the Ghana Lands and Surveys. I had committed publicly my ministry, because I said, so this is how we put my ministry to settle. You give them the land, I will build the road in so they can get it. We always, the Alliance for Change, always said, oh, listen to me, we always have to have an alternative. But and unfortunately, it wasn't done. It wasn't done. I myself went to meet the chambers in Berbice and New Amsterdam and Quarantine and said, we acknowledge that this would be a pressure on the community. What can we do? Or what do you think is needed or can be done to migrate the impact? Historical facts, but no one, because there's a narrative, oh, you retrench 7,000 workers, you never tried anything like that and so forth. That's a narrative, it's a popular narrative. As I said at the beginning of the program, one of our biggest issues is PR. We were absolutely, I can't use that word, abysmal. That's it, you know what I mean, in communicating what we're doing. Facts. You go back there and you will check that's where it was going to be. The first shore base signed, and persons that are now building shore bases, persons that are now in the government, that are now in the private sector, that they file legal suit against us on going there. Public record. So, you know what I mean? So, not that you didn't want to help, not that you did not realize that you have a responsibility, and we did have a responsibility. I can recall when the decision was talked about right-sizing the thing. I insisted, and myself and the Alliance for Change insisted in going and meet that board. Because, of course, we read the report. Going and meet that board, I think it was headed by either Patterson or
Patterson was head of the commission inquiry.
Commission inquiry.
Like Thomas was the head of the board.
No, well, commission inquiry.
Right. Patterson was the head of it.
We set up. We met with them.
Patterson.
We met with them. We said, I mean, and things. So myself and Comrade Ramchatan, I could remember us because we met with them. We didn't like the responses that they gave, which were very technical. I mean, went over my head, you know what I mean, the yield and the crops and those things like that. And we insisted that they can't come back, you know what I mean? But having said that, I would also acknowledge right here, and I've also acknowledged that it could have been handled better, right? We could have been handled better. We as the Alliance for Change had asked, let us do it in a stage fashion. In the sense that you don't do it, you know what I mean, in a stage fashion and so forth. And when the numbers came back, you know what I mean, it still wasn't sustainable in the stage fashion, I mean. But we don't, because you support it, and Dominic could tell you, because you support the decision, you know what I mean, you don't come back and say, you know what I mean, we prefer to do it in a stage fashion or not. Realities could be handled better. We could have done more. We could have insisted more. You know what I mean? We could have fought the persons that. And if you go back, and you're a great researcher, Freddie, and I'm sure you are as well. If you go back, we announced it. I still have the cabinet paper. I could show that we went. They said this, the blueprint. Even an investor from the United Kingdom brought here by the High Commissioner of the British High Commissioner, lay claimed to the lands which was settled for the first shore base. And this is way before Exxon, because obviously we knew it, or they would have to have a shore base, because obviously we were the government and Exxon laid out the plan. Way before Exxon brought in their request for
I just look at my mango pelter and time is going. There's so much things to add to.
Yes, sorry, but I'm talking too much of mine.
No, we want to get in. I'm going to touch on something, and if you're uncomfortable with it, we'll go over to Akash, because it involves you personally. I raised it with Dominique Gaskin because it hit the news when the book came out. The book came out in March, and that was the first few pages, this revelation. If you're uncomfortable with it, we'll move on, because there's so many things to add. Raphael Trotman's book.
No. There's nothing to be uncomfortable.
Okay. We raised the question with Dominique Gaskin, and I will give you his take on it. The book came out in March, and it was, I'm sure a majority of the Guyanese population didn't know. He said when the AFC won the election, he was not assigned a ministry, and it was President Granger who gave him the ministry. Dominique Gaskin said he cannot understand that. His position was that if Trotman wanted a ministry, he doesn't see in the configuration of things how we could not have gotten the ministry. If there was no ministry assigned to Trotman, because of your standing in the party, Kemba Trotman would have been the leader, but from what I know, your character stood tall in that party. And I think that's because of the nature of your personality. You had to play a part in denying him a cabinet position. A few of you had to make that decision.
But once again, Freddie, it's one of those semantic sort of conversations. When the Commonwealth Accord was negotiated, right? The Alliance for Change went to the discussions saying that we wanted a lean government. And even our manifestos, our action plans from 2000, our 11 ministries only. It says for a country of 800,000 persons, we think 11 ministries is adequate to administer the work of Guyana. Based on that, remember though that we prepared the draft of the Commonwealth Accord. Based on that, 40% of 11 ministries was for. 4 points only, but they did not spill over on the 0.5. So we went into the negotiations for the Commonwealth Accord, requesting 4 ministries out of an 11 ministry cabinet. And we said, and the ministries we ended up with were not the ministries we requested, and that would be a longer than to tell you how they. But
we can have you back for sure.
But one of the ministries we wanted, we insisted we have. But even before I go into the ministry, there was under no concept whatsoever that Raphael Trotman would not be a minister within our government, right? However, we went in, as you could recall, Freddie, because I started off saying the constitutional reform was our number one issue. We went in requesting Attorney General. We went in requesting agriculture, right? And tourism, right? And the fourth one, works and home affairs were never, ever on the agenda. When the initial draft, the very first draft of the Commonwealth Accord. And I could say this, and during the negotiations, which was going nowhere, because we recognized that persons on the other side felt strongly they wanted the Attorney General, because of course, you know, we had a lot of lawyers touted for Attorney General and who were going to push it. We had to make a decision if we wanted the discussions to proceed. And maybe you could say it's our very first mistake, maybe not. And we made the decision saying that we would, if we concede the position of Attorney General, that's how come Home Affairs and Works came in, which at the time we felt that they wanted our colleagues wanted those two positions so badly that they would say, no, it's too much to give up for Attorney General. But the forces that wanted Attorney General were very powerful in on that side. So but we knew that when the final number of ministries were presented, one will go to Raphael Trotman. The discussion was always between, of course, between the Prime Minister, because after the President is sworn in, the Prime Minister became the spokesperson for the Alliance for Change, because, of course, previous to that, I was the spokesperson and the General Secretary because of the political discussion. When the final number of ministries was agreed, and it ended up, I can't remember how much it is, what we still had 2 or 3 ministries to be named. Right? So we knew if it was only 4, if it would have only been 4, I can guarantee you I would not have been in things so rough, because that offer was made as well. Right? That offer, and you should know that, Freddie, as well. You should know that well, that the offer would settle rough. You can, so Kemraj at home. Kemraj was, Home Affairs. Moses was slated all the while to be agriculture. Cathy Hughes was slated to be tourism. The one and only one that was not slated for any particular person would have been public works. That discussion came up and Rafa said, David, you are better suited, don't let's do that. So when the final list came out, right, we had 40%. So the 20 ministries, the final list, we still have 4 or 5 to choose from, and obviously the first person that we would replace. If it was only 4, we would have insisted that Raphael take one of the 4 that we were guaranteed.
Well, I'm glad.
That's the exact same thing that the dumb.
I'm sure you read the book, though. I'm sure you read the book of.
No, what I think, and for clarity's sake, I think what Raphael was saying is that Granger, when he did that, Granger did not call Raphael and say, "Listen to me, there's no place for you. You come into this here." So, very first meeting, I know that Moses said that we have to decide on the ministries. That Mr. Trotman is unassigned if we go to this, and Granger said that there's no time he's contemplating. This is the very first meeting that there be a government that does not include Raphael Trotman. The Alliance for Change said that there will be no government that does not include Raphael.
He didn't say that in the book.
No, he said no. What he said, you must. Maybe it's true.
No, read the book.
The book has. It's a technicality.
The book has annoyance in it that I was surprised I wasn't named a minister. But let's go to Akash, and David, if we could be brief so we could get in. There's 4 minutes left. Akash, and then
look. I want to look at, let's look towards the future. Mm-hmm. And in doing so, let's step back to the genesis of what happened. In 2011, when you got that 7 seat and went into parliament, there was a minority government. Obviously, everybody saw the AFC as the force. In some ways, me. And because I and as later got into understanding politics, I realized that this is really a strong force. Then obviously went into government, and I believe that a lot of the persons that voted for the Alliance of Change were independent thinkers, and those independent thinkers are the ones, and those same, and many of those sugar workers too, because we know they really did show their support behind the party, came out, supported AFC Ghana in the government. History, it is what it is. We're here, but what many are of the opinion that the leadership of the AFC is somewhat spent, and who is going to go to the ground now, boots on the ground, who is going to go there, and who is going to go back to those same sugar workers and present the facts, as you said earlier, to them to say, well, here, we are here again, and this is what we are bringing to you, so that you sort of win their votes again.
Well, that is one area that I have no problem with at all, because we have some really good youths. I started off this saying that that I thought this time we allow the youngers to come. I'm not old, but I've been around in it quite well, and I am pleased to say, of course you will doubt me, everybody will doubt me, but I'm pleased to say we have some energetic youths that are on board. They put me to shame because they have way more energy than me. They have they're way more radical than me. I'm a conservative, so I'm not worried about who will come, who will go to because that's already happening. The engagement I do find, and that you may not think so, but the engagement at the youth level has risen tremendously in the last 6 months. What I'm worried about, the concern that I would have, is the reception of the message, not the messengers. So that's what I think I'm focusing on, right? I'm not worried at all about the next cadre of AFC persons. They're very ambitious, well, of course, I'm not there to block it up, but they're very ambitious. It's more the reception of the message, the communication message, not the messengers. I do think that we have a really good set of youngsters with messengers. The boots on the ground. We're in a different paradigm now. Social media is around. So we have to try the combination, particularly with the younger one. Boots on the ground vis-a-vis social media content. And I think that's probably where we are battling at the moment. So to get that content, the old school ones believe in the handshaking, touching flesh, and those things like that. The youth think that they can touch flesh, but they can get a wider audience through other means. So that's where we are at the moment.
One last question before I ask this question. Would you give us now, and if you think it's not possible, I will contact you later, would you sit down in the same chair with two other people who know this history of the AFC, who knows about the AFC in government, who knows about in the nerve center of the AFC? Would you sit down with two other people and discuss this?
Unfortunately, let me say, I don't really think that'd be helpful to me. Not to me or the party. And I need to explain. Freddie, that suffered from a slight form of dyslexia going up. Transport numbers and so. And as a coping mechanism, since quite a while ago, I document every single thing. And it's now become like a OCD. Right? So I have as I always tell everybody, so what I say is not a lot of people say, I heard this third-hand, fourth-hand information. While as General Secretary, I document. So I really don't think it's really prof me to sit down and somebody speculate on what happened. I've heard my former colleagues that came here. A person has sent me, and I must admit that they've been true to what they are. I'm not going to sit down here with somebody who's in the third or the fourth tier, who wasn't in the room, who heard a rumor, who heard a piece of thing. I was there.
Okay.
So, but if there's any particular issue that you think that you mean, of course, I did confidentiality prevails. But if there's any particular issue, you definitely need proof on. I don't do this. But if somebody says that we dropped a bomb, I would bring you the notes to show that we never did drop a bomb. But I'm not here to
close. You would say definitively that the PNC, not APNU, the PNC party. APNU was just one minister, Rupert Uterine. Would you say most definitely to our viewers, the AFC was an equal partner in government and exercised power without being overwhelmed by the PNC? I say that, and
we're not an equal party. They're a bigger party. They had 60% of the.
Were you overwhelmed by them, and therefore you were
definitely,
and therefore you couldn't?
Definitely not. Right? Definitely not. You know what I mean? And maybe one day I can elaborate which you can on things that never happened because we insisted it cannot happen.
Oh, we gotta go.
Time is flying.
I know our operator said we're over 1 minute. Just quickly, what is so bad about the PPP that you can't form an alliance with them for 2025? You tried the PNC. I mean, we don't know what they would say. But what's so bad about them?
No, that's not a question for me. It's a question for my party, right? But let me say for me personally, you know what I mean, even though I'm in what you call my autumn of my political years, you know what I mean, it's not something that I contemplate at all or would even contemplate.
But you will go with the PNC in 2025?
I didn't say that either, but that's a decision of my party. But you know what I mean. Look,
which of the two you would prefer to go with?
Well, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. You know what I mean. The PPP has been since, and you know this, Freddie, and why you would ask that. I mean, I know you're a bit more comfortable now with the PPP than when it is, but you know what they would have done to us.
But there's a new president, a new government.
The players is still there's not.
And the PNC not.
No, I'm not saying that. No, you asked me the PM. You know, Freddie, myself, and you, and I can't let you throw that out with other people. You know the history. You know the things that they've done to us, me and you. Yeah. Previously under the PPP.
But we dialectics, we gotta move on. Ali is not. Ali is
certain scars.
Well, you gotta
run deep. I mean, I am not.
But certain scars run deep for me with the PNC.
Yes, and they run equally deep.
Anyway, look,
equally deep. You mean I've never been a member of the PNC, and I would never ever be a member of the PNC.
Right,
never ever be.
But you seem to more favor going into David industrial relations come first. Our operators have to go.
The PNC has never done me quarter of the things, and this is
so
even.
It's personal or it's more patriotic?
No.
It's personal.
As well.
It's not personal. It's got to be.
No. I think we should have Miss Madison here.
Gentlemen, thank you for having me here. You know what I mean? Yeah, sorry for taking up your time, Freddie.
No problem. No, we'll have give a couple of weeks. We'll have you back again. This has been the Gildarie Freddie Kissoon show. Our guest co-host will be with us from time to time, more frequent than you believe. Akash Prasad. Our guest was David Patterson, former Minister of Public Infrastructure. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you on Friday, as I normally say. Catch you later.